Hey sports fan, today's going to be the second half of my February wrap up, and it should not be as long-winded as the first half, so let's just get started. First up is going to be the silliest thing that I read, and that is Volume 1 of Under the Oak Tree. I've technically already read this. I read it online and then I bought a physical copy so I could have it to read whenever I want. Under the Oak Tree is a Korean graphic novel by Suji Kim. I think it's also a light novel. I might be using light novel incorrectly. If you can just let me know in the comments. This is a very kind of generic, goofy, over-the-top romantasy. It's about this redheaded young lady, Maximilian. She's married off to this man whose name is Riften. He is a knight who started like from nothing, and he's been very successful as a knight and made a huge fortune for himself. Maximilian's father makes a marriage of convenience for him, really. Her dad sucks. He's super abusive physically, emotionally, verbally. It's really gross. So this is kind of like an escape for her away from her home. But honestly, Riften is not, he's not great either. Like, he's not straight up abusive, but he is very controlling. He's not very gentle. He's not unkind, but he does not know how to be like nice, I guess. Anyway, it's so cheesy, it's so corny, it's so over the top. I really enjoy it. This is one of my preferred brain off entertainments. I would put it up there with other goofy things that I like The Expendables or like The Avengers. Where it's just not necessarily the best in quality or storytelling, but it's very entertaining. If all I want is to be entertained, then I'm going to reach for something like this. I think I gave this an overall 3-star rating. I gave it a 3 on vibes because I just enjoy it. It's not great, it's not impressive, it's not really original or unique, it just is entertaining. So I gave it a 3 there, and I gave it a 2 for technical skill because, again, the writing is not impressive. If anything, the writing is kind of like not great. It's not the worst, but it's not very good either. And I wouldn't want you to go into this thinking that the writing is like phenomenal because it's really not. It's also translated, I believe, from Korean, so keep that in mind if you decide to pick this up. Would I recommend this? Maybe. If you like kind of a generic romantasy, if you like a marriage of convenience, if you like a damsel in distress and a grumpy, tough exterior type of man, then yeah, this might be for you. If you don't like those things, then it's not for you. And would I reread this? Yes, I already have. Next up was a reread, which I don't actually do that often, but I decided that I really wanted to reread Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I gave this a 4-star rating overall. I gave it a 4 on vibes and just the story and how much I enjoyed that. I gave it a 3 on technical skill. Please don't come for me, but I don't think Brandon Sanderson is like a phenomenal writer. I think he's a fantastic storyteller. The thought and depth that he puts into his worlds and the intricacies of how these worlds work and the people is great. And that is him telling a really good story. If anything, I think that his writing is actually getting a little bit worse over time. It's not that the writing is getting worse, I think it's that the editing is getting worse. I think his earlier works were a little bit more heavily edited, and some of the more recent work seems like maybe for the sake of expediency, it's not as heavily edited, so some of the weaker parts of his writing are showing through. That's irrelevant. That's why I gave Warbreaker a 3 out of 5 on technical skill. Would I recommend Warbreaker? Absolutely. I think it's a great book. I think it's a great place to enter into Brandon Sanderson's writing if you've never read it. Or if you've read something of his that you didn't like, I think that Warbreaker is kind of the Brandon Sanderson book for people who don't like Brandon Sanderson, if that makes any sense at all. And would I reread it? Yeah, I'll probably reread it again at some point down the line. So there are kind of 3 main plot lines within Warbreaker. The first centers around 2 sisters. They are 2 princesses who come from a kingdom that's kind of north of where the story really takes place. And they come from a kingdom where people are very buttoned up. They don't like to express a lot of emotion. They don't like to have a lot of ornamentation in their homes or on their person. It's considered ostentatious and like an affront to their god. The kingdom where the vast majority of this story takes place is completely different from this little northern kingdom. In this kingdom, the people worship multiple gods, and in fact, they are living gods that you can go and see. They are like enormous, perfect looking humans who have a vast amount of what is called breath. And this is kind of like, it's not your life force. It's somewhere along the lines of like your soul, but you don't die without it. You just become kind of cut off from the vibrancy of life without breath. In addition to being like the vibrancy of life, breath also can give its user magic abilities. The more breath that you have, the more powerful you are. And these gods have astronomical amounts of breath. And the one who rules over the gods, the god king, has just an obscene amount of breath. It's unheard of. It's unparalleled. He is the god king for a reason. If we circle back to the two princesses I mentioned, the eldest princess has been promised to the god king. It was part of a treaty that was written between their kingdoms years and years and years ago. Her father is supposed to send her off to be married to the god king, but she is his favorite child. He loves her. Honestly, he loves her more than his other kids. He values her more. He thinks that she's a super special snowflake, and he just can't do it. He cannot send his favorite child to be married to this monster. But who he can send is his least favorite child, which is the youngest sister. So the youngest sister is sent off to marry the god king in the place of the eldest. But it turns out the youngest sister doesn't hate this situation as much as she thought she would. The eldest sister, however, sets off on a journey to save her younger sister. Rereading it a second time, I think that there's some subtext and subtlety to what the eldest sister, Vivenna is her name, what she does. She says that she's setting out to save her younger sister, Ciri. It seems more like Vivenna is setting out because she's slighted. She's kind of pissed that she has been preparing her whole life to be married off to this god king. She's been super important, super special her whole life. And then at go time, she is not sent. And she is pissed. She's like, what am I supposed to do now? So she sets off on a journey to save her sister, but she kind of finds herself, she comes into her own, and she finds a different purpose on her adventure. The third leg of this story centers around one of the gods. He is kind of disgruntled. He's kind of over being a god. The gods live this life of excess. They live a life of privilege, of gluttony. All they do is like sit around and eat when they don't even actually need to eat. They just do it to enjoy themselves, which is, if you think about it, like extra gross because there are people who live in the city who are actually starving, but these gods who don't actually need to consume food have every possible dish that they could want at their beck and call at any given moment. That's irrelevant, but he is dissatisfied with his life as a god. He's not even sure if he is a god. He really wants to know about his life before he was a god. And his discontent sets him down a path of unraveling some of the secrets about this entire theocracy and how things work here and why they work the way that they do, and whether or not it's a good thing. I really enjoyed Warbreaker. I think reading it a second time gave me an opportunity to step back and not be as amazed with certain plot points or twists. And it let me look at the story with more of a critical eye. So my rating did come down from a 5 to a 4. I don't think that this is bad at all. It's still a 4-star book. I really enjoy it. I don't think it's a 5-star book. Last up, I read The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig. I really enjoyed this, and I actually have a ton of notes, so bear with me because I have a lot to say about this book. The 13th Child is a story of Hazel, who is a 13th child, and she is promised to the god of death. Hazel becomes a healer, and she is gifted with the ability to see the cure to any illness just by touching the patient. But when an illness or injury can't be healed or cured, Hazel has to assist death in collecting their soul and ushering it to the afterlife. She basically has to help people die. Eventually, destiny comes knocking at Hazel's door, and she is whisked away to the royal court to heal the king of a very mysterious illness that nobody understands where it came from, how it came about, what it even is, and how to cure it. When Hazel sees that she is supposed to assist this king into the afterlife, she ends up having to make a choice between following her heart or doing her duty. That's the blurb on the back of the book. That's what you'll see on like Goodreads describing this book, but it is so vague and really does not even touch the tip of the iceberg of what this story is really about. One of the first and I think most important things to know about the story is that Hazel is an unwanted 13th child. She is unwanted by her parents and her family, but coveted by the gods. In this world, 13th children are important. They have a deeper connection to the gods, and they're able to alter the world and like alter fate in a unique way. So Hazel's parents make a deal with death. He's supposed to take this kid off their hands, but he doesn't take her immediately. So she has to spend a significant portion of her life, her early childhood, living in a home with 12 other children and parents who don't want her. And now they're upset because death didn't take her immediately like they thought he would. I think that this is an important point and an important aspect of the story because it really paints a picture of Hazel's character. Hazel has a deep yearning for love and a fear of abandonment, and it colors everything that she does. Every choice that she makes is influenced by her desperate need to be loved, to be valued and cared for who she is, not for what she can gain other people. It influences how she views the world and other people and how she interacts with other characters, and it affects how she loves other people. I thought that this was a really interesting way to write this character because I don't see it a lot, especially in young adult. Often in young adult writing, especially with female characters who have some sort of trauma, often the trauma is used to kind of spurn characters into being a sword-swinging badass, or it's like pushed down so that they can rise above it and like not be a victim to their own trauma. I thought it was interesting and unique to have Hazel's trauma and Hazel's early childhood really be like her motivating factor in a lot of what she does. It makes her selfless. It makes her not stand up for herself at the same time. It makes her a lot more amenable and like malleable for other people in some ways. In some ways, it makes her put her foot down and do things that maybe she shouldn't have done. It has varying results for Hazel. Hazel's trauma is always in the back of her mind. She is a young woman who craves love and connection, but also lives in constant fear of losing the connections that she forms. I liked how the god of death, who goes by Merrick, he is kind and he shows kindness and love in his own way, but he never stops being a god. He is never really human. He doesn't really know how to be human. He doesn't understand how to look at things from Hazel's perspective because she is a human. So even though he tries to shower her with gifts or provide her with an education, he doesn't know how to connect on a base human level. And I thought that that was interesting. It was a nice way to write this god who wants to interact with humans, but he doesn't really understand how. Also, he never stops being like a little bit scary. There's always kind of a sharp edge to him because he is a god. I really liked the writing in this book. When I picked it up, I didn't even realize that it's like a 500-page book, but it was such a delightful 500 pages. This type of writing is like exactly what I want from young adult writing. It's adult writing. It's mature writing for mature people, but with age-appropriate characters and situations. And I think that that is exactly what I want from young adult. What I find that a lot of young adult and even new adult suffers from is that the writing is written not even for teenagers, but it sounds like it's written by a teenager. I have a lot of issues with young adult right now, but not this one. I thought The 13th Child is a really good example of what a young adult novel should look like. One of the things that I really liked about the writing is that it takes its time with Hazel as a character. We get a lot of time with her as a young person. The first probably third of the book is just setting Hazel up as a character so that we can understand her, we can identify with her, we can care about the things that she cares about. And I really appreciated that. I think that a lot of books kind of introduce the character by name and brief description and then launch into the story. This book gave us a significant amount of time to get to know Hazel on a deeper level. I wouldn't say that this book meanders, but it does really take its time. Having said that, I did have a lot of problems with the pacing at the end of the book, probably in the last quarter of the book. I had some problems with the pacing, and I had some problems with parts of the plot being very convenient in a way that didn't feel organic. It almost felt rushed in the end to just get to the end. And I understand maybe she was trying to keep this book under 700 pages because I do think the end of the book could have benefited from like another maybe 50 pages just to flesh out a little bit more of the mystery and feed us breadcrumbs a little more gently instead of shoving it in our faces at the very end and then the reveal and the resolution happening very quickly. Speaking of the reveals, I felt like the reveal was a little bit underwhelming. I had figured out the who and the what of this mystery very quickly, almost immediately. I don't know why it felt so obvious. I think it has to do with not taking her time in some of these parts. Hints were very, very small and could have been subtle if they had been given more time, if that makes any sense. More time for us to soak that in and say to ourselves, was that pertinent to this mystery or was that a red herring? But we didn't get that time with some of these hints, so it felt kind of abrupt almost when the reveal happens. If you've been paying attention, then you knew exactly what was going to happen. The only thing that I didn't understand was the why. I had an idea and I kind of dropped that idea because I felt like it was really weak. It was really silly. And then that is exactly what ended up happening. I felt like the reasoning behind the mystery was very silly and kind of immature, and it felt out of place for a book that had just spent so much time being a more mature read. This is actually very similar to the problems that I had with House of Salt and Sorrows. I think that this is much, much better than that book, but it has kind of the same issue. And I put in my notes that Erin Craig's writing is mature until it isn't. So it's like the writing has this really beautiful depth until something happens and it just sort of falls off. It's like it just starts to kind of unravel. This book doesn't have an insta-love issue, that's great, but it also doesn't let the romance build in a way that I would have liked. The main love interest has kind of a before and after arc where we meet them before and then they go away and then we meet them again after, and that's really when the romance takes place. The problem with this is that Hazel and this character didn't have a real rapport in the before section. So we didn't get to see them really get to know each other. I think we could have used maybe 2 or 3 more just one-on-one interactions between these characters to get a real feel for the choices that that character makes and why they leave and why they come back. The after part when they come back is delightful. I really enjoyed that. I liked it a lot. But like I said, it didn't feel organic. It didn't feel natural because we didn't have a solid before of why these people care about each other. Despite those complaints, I still really enjoyed The 13th Child. I thought it was a really fun time. Even though it's 500 pages, it reads very quickly, and I really, really like probably the first third of the book and how it's more of like a character study and like a, I guess you could say like slice of life of this character where we just kind of get to see her experiences as she's growing into a woman. Loved that. I gave The 13th Child an overall 4-star rating. I gave it a 4 on vibes and storytelling. I think I gave it a 3 on technical skill just because while the writing in probably the first half of the book is just exactly what I wanted, I did feel that the pacing and some of the plot mechanisms of the second half of the book just were not as strong. Would I recommend The 13th Child? Absolutely. I think that this is great for anybody who reads young adult or young adult fantasy. Would I read this again? Yeah, probably. I will probably find a time to read it again. All right, sports fan, that's it for my wrap up. If you read any of these, please let me know. Let's talk about them. If you felt differently about them than I did, if you loved them, if you hated them, let me know. I'd love to hear it. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for tolerating 2 videos on one wrap up.